we're going to get away from treating sick people, and we're going to try to get in front of this thing and fix people before they get to that point.
Yeah.
That's our goal.
We are going to live longer. They said the first person who's going to live to 150 was just born this year.
Really?
Yeah. But who the F cares if you live to 150 and you're miserable?
Yeah, if the last third of your life is bedridden.
Oh my gosh, could you imagine?
Would you care?
Yeah,
Right.
You'd be that 96-year-old guy that had a kid.
Rami Odeh, what's up, buddy?
What's going on, Rick?
You're back again.
Yeah. Guess what number this is?
6.
I have no idea.
5.
Is it?
I think
7?
it's got to be 4 or 5.
Feels like 27.
Yeah.
Here we go.
It really does.
It does.
All right, so you didn't get the memo, but we're on dad jokes now, but you brought a did you
I
know.
bet did you know. I'm not a dad joke guy.
That's all right.
Okay.
Fire away. What you
Okay.
got?
So I got 2 because I'm going to repeat one because based on what we're going to talk about today. So we did this probably 4 podcasts ago. The average testosterone, did you know that the average testosterone level for males 15 to 39 has dropped 25% in the last 20 years? It's gone from 605 to 450. Did you know that?
I did not.
Yeah. Is it not working?
No.
No.
No, keep going.
Okay.
Keep going. You're still on. I just want to make sure we're actually recording, and I think that we are. So
Okay. All right. I love this. This is a good beginning.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're all good.
Okay. All right. Yeah, why don't you just leave me here for the whole podcast just by myself? I think that's what most people.
It would actually go better if it was just you. So, like, all right, do you have a different? Did you know?
I do, because I wanted to reuse that one. So, did you know the youngest father ever was 11,
Oh, I did hear this. Go ahead.
and the oldest was 96?
Where did you hear that? Because I just heard that.
We just heard it. We both just heard it on the Huberman podcast. I heard it on the way up here. That's
96
nuts.
years old.
Did
And
you hear
his
the
wife was like in her 50s.
50s?
Good for
And then she
him.
divorced him.
Really?
Yeah, you didn't hear the
got
rest
what
of the
she
story?
wanted.
She
She
did.
got
She
what
got
she
the
wanted.
kid. I got you. I'm out of here.
How long are you living with a kid if you have him at 96?
Well, that's what Huberman asked. Like, what
there's
about
no shot? Like, you're not going to be a viable father at that age.
Yeah, 96. So it's good that we're talking about,
The fact that he can still
Being
have
optimal.
sex, like being functionally, can have sex at that age. So
Amazing.
I've got a dad joke for you. So this is in line with like what you like to do, what you used to like to do, which is running. So like I've been trying to get back into it, right? So every morning I announce to my family that I'm going jogging, but then I don't. It's a running joke.
Oh my God. Can we go just stick with that?
Yes.
Can we?
Yes. Yes. I love it. All
I
right,
say
look.
we stick with the
Did you
knows? That's my vote
Look,
for
man,
today.
the dad jokes are so bad they're good, if that makes sense.
You're right. Absolutely right.
They are. But
Yeah.
look,
I'll get one next
Matt and I
time.
are like, look, we'll either do a did you know or a dad joke. We won't
Okay.
pick it yet. So that being said, let's talk about what we are going to talk about today.
Yep.
Which is, first of all, an announcement. It's sort of a soft launch right now. And then why we're doing it. So I think we'll start there, and then we'll just sort of unfurl everything and dig into why. But we are launching a vendor partnership with a company called Marek Health, and I actually heard about them through you.
Yep.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
They were created by a guy who's very famous on the internet, and he's been on many podcasts. I don't even want to say what the name of his handle is because it's so corny. It doesn't really match.
It doesn't match him at all. But he won't change it.
Well, I know. I think he's too ingrained. But anyways, a guy named Derek, and he created this company called Marek Health. And essentially what it is, like a concierge telehealth mechanism to get detailed blood work done in your body, and then to get remedies or treatments to any areas of your life that you may need. Is that a fair assessment?
Perfect.
Honestly, I'd rather have you describe Marek, since you are a corporate coach to a lot of people. You recommend it to everyone. You turned me on to it. So what is Marek, and why is it important?
Yeah, I think just a real quick backstory of how we got there, right? So I've always partnered with a physician because, I'm really smart, but I can't prescribe drugs. I didn't know if you knew that. I do for you, but nobody for else. But
Well, I didn't know about the drug part, but
Or
I
me
did
being
know
really
how
smart.
you were. Yeah. That I was unclear
Yeah,
on.
and so I've always partnered with a kind of what I would consider a more progressive doctor to help my clients in the area of, medications, things like that I can't do, right? I want to have a really trusted partner, not to say, go to your GP and just ask him or her. Like, that doesn't work, right?
Right.
So in my history of doing this, I've had 5, right? I've been
Five
through
different
5
doctors,
different doctors. And
4
you've
detailed blood work.
You've been with a few of them, right?
I have.
Like you and I have worked with all of them. And, across the board, everyone I've worked with, the physician is absolutely brilliant and the staff is absolutely horrible. Would you agree?
Yeah, just the customer service is lacking.
Just not what we're used to. We're entrepreneurs. And the people I'm sending to them are very high level people who it's not about money. It's about having really good service and being kind of catered to.
It's like our ideal client, even in an alloy.
It's exactly
it's like
who
a
they
mover,
are.
shaker, that type of individual.
And I did it when I owned Formwell. I do it in alloys, and I do it with my coaching, right? So I went through a few, and my last one, again, great doctor, just got massive complaints about, I'll give you a quick example. One guy had never done hormone therapy before, got it in the mail with his, hypodermic needle. He's never injected before. He doesn't know how to do it. They didn't tell him. They didn't send him a video. They just sent him a bunch of stuff. So he calls me. He's like, what do I do?
Right.
So I literally took him through a Zoom, and it was funny. My wife walked in, and I'm literally showing a guy how to inject, testosterone on a video. She's like, "What are you doing?"
Right.
Anyway, long story short, found this through a mutual acquaintance of ours. I've heard about them through Derek. I knew they were really good. It's very difficult when you have as many clients as I work with to switch people over. But so as always, like I always do, I did it myself first. Right, went through the whole process, went through all of their stuff.
But
never been more impressed.
Even back up a bit more. What is it?
Yeah. I'm just saying how I got there. Yeah.
Right. But got what? I think.
Yeah.
I think. What is Marek in its bare essence?
Yeah. I think if you think of when you go to your doctor and get a really comprehensive blood work, and then you go over it with your doctor, and hey, your cholesterol is this, or your thyroid level is this. It is that in a telemedicine setting.
Got it.
And it really is. It's really focused on health. So we'll dive deeper into the differences with them.
Right.
But my biggest thing I take away from them is, let's just use a thyroid level, right? Let's just call it 1 to 10 is the range. So if you're 0.8, you're in trouble. If you're 10.1, you're in trouble, right? That's the reference range. But there's the optimal range. That's what they focus on.
Right.
And that is so heads and tails above other places, right? Is yes, this is where you should be, but this is where you really should be. Like our clients, you, me, everybody who wants to be optimal, not just, oh, my cholesterol's in the right range or whatever it is.
Well, and if
right?
you look at, I always think of the average range as the average American.
Yeah.
And
who
if
is
you
obese
think about
and
average
smokes
America
and doesn't do exercise and
poor dietary choices,
Right.
Typically, heavy, if not even in the obese category. We don't want to be measuring ourselves as individuals to that ideal, right? We have to, and so optimal is the key word there, right?
Right. And the other thing I really like about them, if I have to compare them to, let's just say compare them to your general practitioner,
right.
your GP. They're going to look at those reference ranges and they're going to be like, everything looks good. You're good. I'll see you next year. They don't ask you, how do you feel? How are your joints? How's your energy? What are your goals?
Right.
Would you like to lose weight? Do you want to put on muscle? Do you, whatever. You want to run a marathon? Anything? None of that, right?
Right.
They, and I love this. They're like, we talk about symptoms, not about numbers. So, and we'll talk, a little bit about hormones today, and we'll talk about things in that level. 5 different people at 5 different levels can feel completely different.
Right.
Who knows what is good for one person? So they'll say, how do you feel? How's your energy? How's your recovery? How's your libido? How's your whatever that is, right? So impressed with them. So really, I've switched everyone over who's willing to do it. They work all over the country, which is fantastic. And the customer service has just been the best. I put you through it in the beginning, right? Just to kind of test it out.
I loved it. Before we ever bring on a vendor, we would, say it was a new marketing vendor, we would test them at our mothership facility before
100%.
we ever gave them to franchise. So to your point, you had gone through it. We have the mutual good friend, which is Allie, who turned you onto it, who's a big proponent. She connected me to their marketing director, and I'm like, hey, this is something that I think, especially for our customer avatar, which is, again, 45, sometimes a bit younger, sometimes a bit older to 65, right? Mm-hmm. You need to make sure that details on what's going on inside your body.
100%.
Right? Everything from blood pressure to lipids to, all of it, right? You really need to understand what's going on. And it's really hard to get that information, especially when we're looking at optimal through a general practitioner or whatever. Again, if the doctor is in the same age category, if your doctor's in their 50s, they're probably not the healthiest person always either. They're looking at things, they're people at the end of the day, and they're looking at things through their lens. And so we're trying to stack services and things around Alloy that speak to our brand. It's we're a premium brand. We are doing all the right things scientifically for people's bodies, right? We've got a good value proposition with the price point for personal training. Well, this is a very good back-scratching service from a really cool company that can work in any of our locations anywhere around the nation, right?
Which is massive.
Because and it's and also, by the way, there are concierge doctors, and we have clients that take advantage of them where you pay cash. If you did a similar blood panel with a concierge doctor here in Atlanta, we compared it. It was like $6,000 or $7,000, right?
Yep.
This is like around $450 to $500 in that range, right? To get this detailed blood panel and have someone go over it with you.
And I think that is the big, like, that's the huge takeaway.
Right.
Like, for a little bit more money,
report, right?
Yeah, you get this big report, which most people look at and go, "What the heck?" Because they know what cholesterol is and maybe one other thing, right? And then you get a meeting with one of their coaches, their health coaches, right, who also works with me as their general coach, and they're phenomenal. Like, and you know me, I'm a total geek with this stuff, right? I live for this.
So is Allie, and when both of you guys came back through your lens and said these guys are great,
they're great.
So I did the process. So I did the blood work. You just do it at a local LabCorp, right? They send you the script. You go to LabCorp, you get your blood work, and it's included in that price. And then you jump on with like a health coach, and they basically go through your results with you and just and basically explain what it means, right?
Yeah.
If you want to go to the next step, you pay $250, and that is an appointment then with a Merrick provider, which is a doctor or a MD
they're MDs.
or whatever that is.
Yeah, they're MDs.
But they're licensed in all 50 states, so they can work with you anywhere. And then they go through your blood work again with you, with your health advisor also on the phone for that extra $250. And then they basically will say, okay, here's the remedies for the things that you have going on. And some of them can be very simple over-the-counter things.
Vitamin D.
Some we may carry at Alloy, right?
Yep.
Hey, look at this. And, really basic things. And their sort of overall philosophies on health and fitness and things, they're not giving fitness advice, but they do align with, if they were, get more sunlight, get some sleep, move, get more steps, get your zone 2 cardio in. All the things that we've already talked about, they are also recommending, which is super cool, right? So we're perfectly in alignment there. And then you get your sort of suggested, like, and it's almost like you're prioritize like your need to haves and your nice to haves.
Yeah.
And then you can go through and pick and choose what you want. And if you can buy it over the counter, great. If not, they can provide it. And if it needs to come from a pharmacy, it comes from a national like compounding pharmacy, and they ship it straight to you.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it's been seamless. I mean, it really has, and it's really worked well. And what I love is being a coach is sending people there, and this will be the same thing through Alloy. They come back with a lot of recommendations, right? It can be overwhelming, and then I just say, I look at the ones that are really, really need to be done, right? And here's the thing, like I said, they look at symptoms, but then there's also things that pop up, like I'll talk about my blood work a little more later, but like something popped up in mine that has 0 symptoms, right? But they're like, this could be an issue 10 years from now. And they asked me about my history, and I'm like, it was ApoB, right? It was something related to your heart. And it was on the borderline, and they're like, well, my dad had heart disease. And I'm like, you know what? There's a prophylactic drug. It has no side effects. It's not a statin. I was excited about that. I'm not a big statin fan.
Right.
And they're like, you can take this, take it 3 times a week, costs like $4 a month. I never would have thought of that. My doctor never saw that.
Right.
They see that my cholesterol is 180, my HDLs are 60, and my triglycerides are 80. You're good. You're good forever. Even though your father had quadruple bypass, like you're going to be fine, And I was like, thank you. Like there's no symptom until you're dead.
Right.
That's a bad symptom, by the way. I don't know if you know, but like dying.
That's not how you want to recognize.
So look, man, you and I are always looking for partners that are aligned and that we're impressed by. And that's, I'm not being egotistical. You and I have been in the business for 32 years. It's hard to impress us at this point.
It is.
It really is. Like, we talk about our supplements. I'm like, well, let me taste these things. Let me see the background. Is it third-party tested? Like, we're not like these regular consumers. And for us to be impressed, and so I've put my wife through it. We just talked about my son is going to do it.
My daughter's
Your
gone
daughter's
through it.
doing
She's
it.
only 24. I mean, I think it's more pertinent for our target audience, but I think it's a good baseline for anyone.
Yeah.
Find out where you are, get retested a couple times a year.
Yeah.
And then you'll know. It's almost like, how else do you really know without, taking a peek under the hood at what's really going on in your body?
Yeah.
This is a very convenient, smooth, seamless way, and it's very inexpensive compared to what you'd pay a concierge doctor.
Yeah, I have a great example on this that never would it's such a benefit for me as a coach. I have a fairly new client, 3 or 4 months. He's in really good shape, 63 years old. Blood panel was really actually good. Testosterone was like 700 naturally, like really good for a 63-year-old. Feels great, looks good, drinks way too much, right? And it was the first thing we worked on. I said, look, let's just work on the low-hanging fruit. Like literally a guy getting 30 to 40% of his, he's going to listen to this and know who it is. I'm so bad about HIPAA, but I'm not going to use his name. And he's fine about this. And he's getting like 30% of his calories from alcohol every day, right? And of course, I'm telling him everything, kind of landing, make it. So he does his blood work with Marek. And of course, liver enzymes are through the roof.
Right.
And they send him all this information about what is happening in your body and what's going to happen in the next 10 years. That guy has changed in the last 3 months more than like any of my clients because of that.
Yep.
Again, he really didn't have symptoms. He's kind of living a great life, like feels good, has fun partying, you know, but they're like, this is literally what's going to happen. Not if, this is where your liver enzymes are. Guy, he said, I go to the doctor, they don't say anything. They don't even ask me how much I drink.
Yeah,
I mean,
well, that's the
so
difference.
that's an example, right? That's a huge difference. So anyway, we're loving them. We're loving them.
Well, we are, and I mean, it's early innings. This is really the first we've even talked about. I think the landing page will be built out, probably in the next few days, so it should be live by the time this comes out. We'll make a formal announcement. I'm going to have someone from Marek come on, describe the history of the company and kind of what they see as the benefit. But I think it's going to be a good segue, for us. It's sort of the introduction of it. It's a perfect back scratcher to what we currently do.
Right.
And so now that we've described it, again, Marek Health, we're bringing them on as a vendor. Great. What do you think of the benefits? So let's say that you get your blood panels back and there are things that need to be done, right? Some of them, again, maybe just take vitamin D, very
Some
expensive.
are simple, right?
I mean, I had a few, like take a baby aspirin 3 times a week. I mean, just real basic things, right? But let's say that it goes a step further and there are hormones that you need, right, to fill in some deficiencies. So let's talk about the benefits for both at a high level, because I know how deep this can go.
You don't want to go Atia Huberman level?
I don't. But so let's talk about benefits for, say, men and or women, and maybe we'll just start with men in general. So let's say that you present with a few different symptoms that could be an Occam's razor thing, where let's say you come in with very low testosterone, you have lost your drive, you've lost maybe your libido, and that's not necessarily tied to that, but like sometimes it's part and parcel. You lost your drive, you just don't feel like yourself, and I'm air quoting that. Like, what is the benefit then of doing something about it, addressing it?
That's great. So I like focusing on that, and look, that's just like almost every alloy client comes into us probably for weight loss, maybe muscle gain, but in general, it's probably 80%, right? Almost everyone that I work with mostly men over 40. Almost all of them have some type of symptoms or want to know about their hormone level.
Don't hit the table because
like that.
Yeah, exactly. The whole podcast is boom, boom,
I know.
Boom, boom, boom.
So, that's the majority of my clientele. So it's a good thing for me to focus on, and it's me and it's you and it's, all of our friends. And so, I think that there's a lot of misconceptions. So is that okay to start there? Sort of like that. Is that what
let's start with just the
You want to start with the pros. Okay. Yeah. Okay. It's funny, audience, we had a schedule here and was all set, and Rick changed it all 5 minutes before the podcast.
I
didn't love
it. The flow was off.
Maybe 7 minutes before.
Bad flow.
The fact that you even read my notes, I felt really good about that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I kept your points. I just rearranged them.
I know, I love it. I
just want to talk about...
so let's talk about the pros.
What are the benefits for men and women? Like if you have some deficiencies hormonally or otherwise, what are the benefits in addressing those things?
Yeah, so I have notes today because, there are so many that, so I'm going to kind of go down them and then we can talk in specific ones jump out at you. One of the biggest ones I tell people, for me personally, was like joy in daily activities. Like you're getting through the day and everything's just fine, but there's just no level of like excitement. And the example I use is I love music. And like Led Zeppelin was one of my favorite bands, showing my age, right? And when I hear a great Led Zeppelin song, when my hormones are low, I go, oh, that's Stairway to Heaven, great song. When my hormones are normal, I am rocking like a teenager in my car.
Right.
That's a great analogy of the difference of where I'm still living my life, everything's fine, but just I'm operating on such a higher level. So like joy in daily activities to me is one that people don't even think about.
What's our brand promise?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Looking good, feeling great, living life to the fullest.
Living life to the fullest. And if you don't have it, it's miserable. And sometimes you don't realize it until you fix it. So joy in daily activities, some of the ones everybody knows, drive, confidence, passion, right? And those are just, you think about hormones, you think about maybe sexual performance or things like that, but it's really in everything. In your job, you've seen it in me, like the difference in my passion for my work and just really loving what you do, right? Anxiety reduction, and when we get into kind of why we came to it, that was my driver that got to it. Right. Depression reduction, those are kind of the ones, sleep is way better. Definitely work out harder, enjoy working out more. That's one of the biggest things I get from my guys. Like they look for, imagine that for our avatar. They want to go to the workouts.
Right.
Huge difference, right? Really good ones. Recovery, joint pain, fat loss, muscle gain and strength gain. We know those are normal when you get your hormones level. Bone mineral density. A lot of people don't know that, right? Makes sense.
Yeah, you think about like bone loss.
So for women,
as you age, yes. Yeah. Well, and by the way, these are
you
for might
everyone.
hear these and you're hearing it, and there's two guys talking to you about it. This is for men and women.
100%.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that women, it's been very comfortable to talk about estrogen because we've been doing that for 50 years. And then men, it's okay to talk about menopause, right? It's getting a little better, but both are important for both of us, right? Like if a man's estrogen gets too low, it's awful.
Right.
It's really, really bad.
Right.
And if a woman's testosterone gets too low, it's the same.
Exactly.
It's different levels, right? But it really is. And we've seen that in people that we know. Decreased fractures, mental clarity, obviously libido increase, and the normal things like sexual pleasure and erections in the morning. Can I say that on the podcast?
I don't ever want to have you look me eye to eye and
say erections in the morning.
And sexual pleasure in the morning, ever.
I was like, should I even throw that in there? Because we're talking about men and women.
Not.
Okay, we can delete that.
Yeah, no.
But
we'll leave it. But
look, I think that's a big list, right? And I have experienced all of those, in this journey, and everyone I've brought through this has experienced that to a different level.
Right.
There are guys I know that are clinically depressed, been on everything,
SSRIs, the whole deal, yeah.
and they get their testosterone level and it all goes away. Yeah. Same thing. And then females who don't even know about this, you bring them to it and it's really simple. They can do a nasal spray, they can do a cream, like they don't need the level that men do.
Right, yes.
So it's so easy for them to do it and you're good to go. It changes everything, right?
Yeah, well, literally, it's like your hormones drive everything in your body.
Everything.
And so it does literally make you a different person. And if we have customers that are coming in and they're looking for the same things that you just talked about could also be seen, as benefits of exercise, right? And they are.
Of course.
That being said, you can only mitigate some of those, conditions, if you will, or deficiencies so much with like a good diet and exercise. At some point, you're not going to move your hormone levels enough with just that. Now you start there, right? Because that's a great place to start.
Of course.
But if you have a fat loss goal, or if you're just feeling general malaise and you're like, well, like things just aren't feeling quite right, control the things that you can. But why not get a really clear picture of what's going on in your body? And if there's deficiencies there, fill those deficiencies. And I think then you would ask, with all those benefits, why not? And I think that leads to point 2. So let's talk about some of the misconceptions. Because to be honest, the first time that you and I sat down and talked about this, you just brought it up.
You pushed back.
I was a victim of those misconceptions, and I hear those often from other people. The time. So let's talk about misconceptions, male and female. So what are some of those?
So I think the biggest misconception that we're going to battle with for a long time is that what you see in the news versus what you and I and all of our clients are doing. There's a difference between steroid level bodybuilders and hormone replacement, right? There's a huge difference. I give the example of 1 glass of red wine 3 times a week and a gallon of vodka a night. That is literally the difference, right? It's like 10 to 20x what a bodybuilder does.
Well, I will
That's
tell
what
you,
you hear.
That was my immediate reaction was like, there was 2 main objections that I had as a knee jerk. One was like, I felt there was a stigma that came with it that made me felt like I was doing, and I'm air quoting, like I'm on steroids. And then the other stigma was like, I have to do this forever. To which you responded beautifully, which is like, okay, well then, so your alternative would be you don't do it and you feel like you feel. And by the way, I sleep, I eat well, and I exercise. All the things, all the dots were connected. I just started to feel generally different, right? Yeah. But that was, I think, a great way. And I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. And then, by the way, the cost of something like this, it can be expensive if you want to go full in, but like for just a basic hormone replacement, I know at least for me, it's about $50 a month. So it's not cost prohibitive at a certain degree. Obviously, if you want to add a bunch of specialty things around it, it can get there, but you get to choose what those things are. And I think if you start with the big rocks, which is like just get your main hormones dialed in, then you can fine tune. A guy like you're going to fine tune it. You love to experiment.
I love it. I'm a geek.
But for most people, just get the main things handled and you're going to feel worlds better, right?
I thought it was that you saw me with my shirt off and that's when you decided to do it. Was that what it was?
No, I actually saw you with a shirt off, was scared I would turn into that, and that's why
you're like, I'm getting on it. I'm doing 5 times what he's doing.
Whatever he's doing, quadruple it, because that's not good enough.
Yeah, so that's the biggest thing, is that there's this incredible myth, and we're doing
for
better.
Women, it's like, if I'm
a bodybuilder.
I'm going to get a deep voice and turn into a guy if I do a nasal spray testosterone. And the fact is, you are not.
Look, and the example I use with people who push back, and just to step it back, because I pushed back even more than you did. So I started this before you did, and I started it, and we'll talk about our whys deeper. But I started it with my psychiatrist, so it was like anxiety driven, not performance or anything like that. It was, and he kept saying, "Have you checked your testosterone?" And I'm like, you know me, I'm like, what does this guy know? 14 years of medical school compared to me? There's no way. Like, I know way more than him. But I was like, come on, let's just do it, whatever. I'm ready to do an SSRI. I'll do anything, to get rid of this anxiety. 2 years. And by the way, I researched everything natural.
Right.
Before I moved on it. Of course. And of course, I was eating right and lifting weights, and I'm sleeping 8 hours a night. Like, it wasn't like I'm not smoking cigarettes. I'm not doing all this stuff. So I pushed back. So I'm not one of those like early adopters who just jumped in.
Right.
I started probably feeling my symptoms around 45, early 40s, and I didn't start until 49. So, and they're doing it forever. I tell people, if you were a type 1 diabetic, would you yell at me because I'm doing insulin forever?
Right. Yeah. So your pancreas doesn't produce enough insulin, so you're not going to treat that?
I'm not producing enough testosterone. Duh. Like, this is an easy, and by the way, it's super. So the second big misconception is that it's unsafe. It is not at all. When done right with a great doctor, it's terrible to go to the gym and buy some in the back room from Mexico that aren't even,
Well, and
steroids.
the levels of what you think, if you think the misconception is that you're doing that, the levels that bodybuilders or people that buy stuff in the back room,
it's not even close.
It is astronomically higher. We're talking about just getting you back to an optimal range, not juicing you through the roof. And same thing with women. You're never going to do enough prescribed by a doctor to have a deeper voice or grow body hair or turn into a guy or get giant muscles. It doesn't work that way.
It's like the misconception that is nowhere near like it was when you and I started in the industry, that women, they don't want to lift weights because they don't want to become a bodybuilder. Right. I'm like, you have any idea what it takes to get to that level? You have to train 3 hours a day, eat 4,000 calories a day, take copious amounts of drugs, have the genetics, all that to even come close to that, right? And so that's moved on, I hope, for mostly. But this is, and I think it really is, it's getting better with companies like this and with us. And that's why we're doing this today, right?
Well,
like you and I
is, and again, we're two guys talking about it.
I know.
So we're talking about testosterone. Women also take testosterone. And there's a whole list of other hormones that, again, I'm not really qualified to speak on all of it, but Marek Health is. Rami, you probably are more than I am. Mm-hmm. But I do remember listening to a podcast with Peter Attia, and he might have had Derek on the podcast, and he said, one of the biggest disservices we've done is to women, in the sense that we used this one flawed study about hormone replacement and breast cancer. And it turns out it was a flawed study, but it was so alarming. It was such an alarming study that it really stuck. And so this stigma that like, if I do any kind of hormone replacement, it's going to drive like, proclivity to catch breast cancer, or to get breast cancer. It's not true at all. It's
not true.
Like, the study was flawed, right?
No. In fact, low estrogen is more dangerous than anything. And, it's funny. So finally, and I talked about this before the podcast with you, they've had a massive study that just came out this last year, 6,000 men on, people worry about cardiovascular disease with excess testosterone, right? First of all, globally, all the research shows low testosterone is way more dangerous than high testosterone. So that's interesting. So even if you're at a over normal levels, you're safer than if you were low. So that's really powerful. Then that's across the board in research.
Right. And things about like it driving cancer or prostate cancer, all bullshit.
All bullshit. Yep. All bullshit. It's been proven. If you talk to top level urologists, they will tell you the same thing. The other thing, so heart disease is one of the ones that people think, oh my gosh, I've heard high testosterone drives it. So great study, 6,000 men, 5 years, true study, randomized, double blind, the whole deal. The men, and they all had low testosterone, split them into half and half. One group took exogenous, one took a placebo. The placebo had more heart attacks than the men on testosterone.
Crazy.
It's a great study. I sent it to everyone I know, and the doctors sent it to me. And it's called the Traverse study. Look it up. It's phenomenal. And it's not epidemiological. It's not surveys. It's a real study. So we're getting there, right? And so that's to me, that's the biggest misconception, and really that it's only for men. It's absolutely for women. And every woman I know, especially postmenopausal or premenopausal, that goes through this process is so much happier.
Right. You think about like the changes, because we service this age bracket where that's happening.
Yeah.
And you're coming into the gym and you're working hard and you've been diligent and maybe you've actually been pretty fit your whole life, and all of a sudden things just aren't the same.
Yeah.
And your same efforts aren't working, and your midsection is there's a whole litany of reasons why, like, okay, now you're putting on belly fat, which you've never done. It's like, what is this, right? And you go and you get your hormones tweaked a little bit, and it's like you go right back to normal. But again, there's all these stigmas and there's all this fear mongering around what it does, right, to you, and all of its faults.
Yeah,
it's nuts.
Yeah. So I wrote down some of the other misconceptions. I cannot believe I brought notes today. I really feel like a loser, but there's a lot. Yeah, I know. I really did research a little bit more. So, the side effects, 100%, it's all for too much, right? So let's just nail that down. Right. Like, that's literally people overdoing it. Using yourself as an N of one, right? We're not doing that. We're talking about a group of 5,000 men, 6,000 men or whatever. This is a big one. Like, I did a picture of my before and after at a presentation about hormones. And I said, hey guys, all I did was take testosterone and sit on my couch for a year. And everybody cracked up. That's a misconception. I'll just stack this on smoking and not eating well, and I'll change. You will not change. You might feel a little better, but that's not going to happen. So that's a big one. I hate to do this because I know doctors are going to listen to this, but using your GP for this, your general practitioner, there are unicorns. There are great doctors out there who know this. It's pretty rare. It really is. And it's not their fault. It's not a medical school thing.
Well,
they're not trained in it.
No shade, but they're trained to treat sickness, and we're trying to get in front of that.
Right.
Even as a brand, even what we do with exercise and diet, we're trying to get in front of that.
Exactly. And think about how some of these mask. I go to my doctor and I say, I have no energy. I have, my libido, whatever, these are my symptoms. I'm depressed, SSRI. For my lipids can be driven by this, right? So they give me a statin. Like, they're not looking at the root cause of it, right? And again, so that's why we work with, getting back to Marek. That's why we're really happy with this partnership. We talked about how it is for males and females. It's only for muscle building. Absolutely not. This is great for everything, right? This is not a bodybuilder type thing. It does help. I think really for me, I don't know about you, like the biggest change, I've worked out since you've known me. I've worked out since I was 15, right? I've never stopped. My excitement and joy about getting to the gym is definitely elevated.
Just to drive.
Drive. There's been times where I'm like, oh crap, I got to leave. Like, I'm in the gym for that long, I'm like, but this is really great. So that's a good one. You talked about cost. It's not as much. It can be as much as you want. It really can. You can dive into it. Me, I like to play with peptides.
Right,
I like to play
peptides and all that. But
my rule is I try it all and then you try it later, right? That's our rule. I'm your tester.
I love it.
And then this is a big one. And we talked about prostate cancer. So you've hit on a couple ones. It's not. It's all bullshit. And more is better. That's a big one that I've learned personally through a bad doctor. So the guy, really interesting. I switched to another guy. He knew so little about it. He just said to me, well, what does your other doctor do? We'll just do that. I said, aren't you going to do my blood work? I had to ask him to do my blood work. No, and then I was doing pellets at the time, which are very convenient because you do it once and then you don't do it for 6 months. Problem is, if they mess up, you got a problem. These are, women have done it for estrogen forever. Women can do it for testosterone too. If you don't like needles, you don't want a nasal spray or whatever, you can do pellets. But if they mess up, you're sitting with that for 3 or 4 months. And he overdid it, and mine was way too high. It is not good. Like you go to the anxiety comes back. Like there's a bell curve for it, right? There's a reverse U curve for it, and that's a myth too. Like, oh, I feel great when my testosterone was, throw a number out, was 200. It was awful. I felt terrible. I went to 500. I feel great. Well, what if I go to 1,000? What if I go to 1,500?
Diminishing returns.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So those are kind of the big misconceptions that I've seen.
Yeah, I would agree, and I think overwhelmingly when. I was a bit nervous, like we talked about it before, to have this, discussion, because I don't want people to think that, like that there's some kind of like smoke and mirrors, or we're doing something that, again, the misconceptions are where the problem is. But if you listen to any of the experts, anti-aging or whatever these days, it's all out the window.
Look at Tony Robbins' book. There's chapters devoted to this.
Yeah, or like Peter Attia, like we talked about. Read the book Outlive, listen to Dr. Huberman. I mean, there are the best scientists in the world right now that are massive proponents of just filling in these gaps, and it just is going to get you to optimal. It's not a PED or performance enhancing drug. No. It's not a cheat code. It's just getting you back to normal. To your point, I love the analogy of like, hey, if your pancreas isn't producing insulin, do you just ignore it, or do you
imagine sitting at a dinner table? Why are you doing insulin? Because I would die if I didn't do it.
And
it would never do that,
but it can be.
Yeah.
So let's talk about because I think this is where we could have gone if we weren't careful, and I want to make sure that we're talking about there are benefits for men and women.
Yeah.
And it's just to have you perform optimally. And I think that's our brand promise again. Looking good, feeling great, living life to the fullest. to be able to do that, you really need to understand what's going on in your body, and then you need to make like educated choices about how to remedy those things.
Test, don't guess. Right,
100%.
Yeah.
So, and that's the way we do it. We measure movement here. We have the in-body. We can measure everything. Yep. So I'm going to talk about mine first because it's a little bit of a nod to you and how good you were in explaining it to me.
Wait.
Just go through our personal
Are you going
lives.
to compliment me in the next 5 minutes?
It's going to be backhanded, but if you look for it, I think you'll be able to find it. If you look really hard, nah, dude, props to you because we were having coffee and we've been friends for 20 years plus, and so we're having coffee and I was traveling a bunch and I was just like, man, I don't feel like myself. He said, what do you mean? I'm like, I don't know. It's just like, I'm not depressed. I just have like a mild blah. I mean,
and things were going really well. Let's throw that in there.
100%.
Things were like cranking.
Business is killing it.
Yep.
Everything in my family's great.
Kids
Everything's going amazing. Yep. And I'm just feeling like meh, like MEH, for lack of better terms. You know, I don't have the same drive. I always wake up with my hair on fire. I'm excited to get my day started. I love my life. It's like I do this thing, this purposeful thing, building teams, you know, changing life. It's amazing, right? And I just wasn't feeling quite normal. And so I'm describing it to you, and you're like, have you had your testosterone checked? And I had the same reaction that probably some people listening, maybe you had originally.
I did. Yeah.
And I was just like, ugh. I'm like, what do you mean? You're like, well, you know, like maybe your T's low. I'm like, dude, I don't want to get jacked. I'm just trying to whatever, you know, because I was in decent shape already. But I was like, it's not about that. And you're like, no. You don't understand. Like, you're not doing it for that reason. Like, and you told me about your story. You did it for anxiety. So I was like, all right. So you turned me on to this guy that you were going to. I went in, I got a remedy, and within probably 2 or 3 weeks, my testosterone was low, and it went up to the low end of the optimal range. This is probably within like 2 or 3 weeks. But within a month, I felt like a completely different person.
Yeah.
And by the way, I'm sure you've seen this happen a million times since. And I've even just told people, hey, go see somebody if you're feeling this way. And they're always sort of in this age category that you and I are in. And then they report back in a month, they're like, dude, life changing, right?
Yeah.
And they're not people that are looking for, like, again, they're not looking to get jacked per se, right?
Yeah, a lot of them you would never know.
Yeah, like most of the people that I know that I've given the nod to that get on testosterone, you don't know it. You can't see it. They're not.
You can hear it in them.
Oh, they've got energy. They feel great. Their mental clarity's better. They're sharper, right? They're on their game. They seem more youthful in their affect, but they're not walking around with giant muscles. So I just want to make that clear.
Yeah.
So immediately that veil, that fog lifted, and I felt better. And then,
mental clarity. I don't know if I jumped in on that one. But
that was the number one thing for me was mental clarity and just drive. And so then it sort of manifested itself in all these other ways, like, maybe I wasn't as diligent with heavy travel about working out as I used to be. Well, now I just had a little bit of drive. So imagine like that word that we all love to use, which is motivation. It's like the work comes before the motivation. What if there was something out there that could make you healthier, which you've touched on that, but could also be a cheat code to just make you want just a little bit more motivation to do the thing? And that's what I felt like. So like, I might do a couple of more emails that I normally would just be like, bro, I just didn't want to do them, right? So I'm like, okay, now I've got juice, right? I'm doing that. Now I'm working out more regularly. I'm making better food choices. So all these things just sort of fell in line because my attitude towards them changed. Not because, you know, I was, I felt like lifting a bunch of weights. It's like I just had more energy to do the things in my life that I enjoyed that I knew would make me a better person.
Which you were really surprised at. And I told you it was going to happen, but you were like, I did not believe
I expected this physical manifestation first because I equated any kind of testosterone treatment with sport performance or bodybuilding, or you're cheating in baseball. That's kind of how I had it, right? And so it's like to think of it from a mental clarity standpoint, and that was the first thing I noticed was like, oh man, I feel so good. But then all the other things started to fall in line. And then, yes, physically, like, my back pain subsided a bit. Yeah. Some of my joint pain got better. I did get stronger because, of course, my hormone profile is better. And I'm also being more diligent. So it's like this.
It's hard to tell.
It is because, like, okay, I'm showing up with more energy and working out harder. But I'll never forget, I probably went about 4 or 5 years without getting on the in-body just because I've kind of been static for a long time. Yeah. So this was the aesthetic benefit that I wasn't planning on, right? No plan at all. Yep. But I am more motivated, so I'm doing more of the things I should be doing. So 4 years later, so now I'm in my I maybe just turned 50, I think, right?
Yeah, I think it was right before. Yeah, it was so almost 3 or 4 years ago. Yeah, so I started.
I just turned. Yeah, I started in like probably my 45, 46. Mm-hmm. So I turned 50. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna do this thing. So I got back on the in-body. I hadn't been on it in 4 years. And the last time I did it, because it saves all your results.
I actually remember the number.
I was like 220 pounds-ish, right? with like 17% body fat, which is really high for me. It's still well within the normal range for men.
Right.
But for me, it was like, okay, well, that wasn't great. But I didn't expect anything different. My eating wasn't great. I wasn't working out. I was traveling a bunch. Wasn't working out as much as I should. So I got back on it. Mind you, nothing really changed. Like my philosophies were the same. I was doing alloy-based workouts. I'm doing everything the same. Nothing else changed. My diet was pretty much the same, except I wasn't traveling as much. So I get on there again. Now I'm 225-ish, right? And my body fat was 8.9%.
Yeah.
So I literally halved my body fat and increased my body weight. I put on 12 pounds of muscle.
Yeah. Which at our age is it's legit.
I mean, it's nearly impossible. And
Yeah.
I lost a ton of body fat. My visceral fat like plummeted, which is really healthy for you.
Sure.
And I felt great. So it's like, okay, so wait a minute. Like I feel great. And then as a side benefit, which is not why I did it at all, like physically, it literally changed my whole profile and made me a much healthier person. And all this while getting my blood pressure, blood work done, all my markers improved from this one thing. So it's just really interesting for me. And of course now, I was almost embarrassed to talk about it early on because I had the stigma around it.
Sure.
Now I'm shouting it from the mountaintops because it makes you feel so much better. And those stigmas, those misconceptions, maybe not to, like if you're a potential alloy franchisee and you're not into health and fitness, this might be a relatively new message. For people that are in the know, it's all those barriers and walls have come down.
Yeah.
Agreed?
Yeah. If you have anything, it's on you right now because all the research is so good and it is safe and it's inexpensive. And again, just keep going back to what I've said 5 times, with a good practitioner.
Right.
We love Marek. Doesn't have to be with Marek. Find a good doctor.
If you've got a functional health medicine doctor who can actually give you not just random blood work and be like, you're fine because like I'm 60 and we're in the same category and this person's 40 pounds overweight. It's like, all right, well, I'm not trying to be you. I'm trying to be my best, right? And so go to someone or that's why we're providing Marek. I just think it's a great option. But talk about that was mine.
It's a great story.
But what has been your personal why?
And I have to
what
preface it. I have to preface it because, as you know, I'm a high energy guy generally, and my energy now because I'm just loving what I'm doing and everything is optimized. I have to be really careful when I talk about this because I come across, I know this as almost a zealot a little bit, right? So I have to be really careful.
That's a good point.
And I have to define. I am 100%. We start with the basics. Somebody comes into me and they're not eating right and they're not lifting weights. I do blood work to get a baseline because I do that with everyone, but I don't push this at all. It's mostly like when a guy, like I've just had a client, he's been with me 8 months. He's doing everything right and he's just stagnated. And we tested and his testosterone was 280. Right. And I knew it was, but I didn't want to go there right away. And so I want to be super clear because a lot of the guys in my tribe and my mastermind group are going to hear this. And I get a reputation of being the hormone guy because I'm on stage talking about it. I'm passionate about it, but it's not my first go-to. So that goes back to my story.
I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, it's really important. And I've heard it from guys. They're like, look, we get it. You're excited about this, right? And people are always asking me about it. And I think they don't hear me when I say, do everything else first. But here's the thing, like you said it before, if you're so depressed and so tired that going to the gym is like dragging a 100-pound weight behind you, it ain't going to happen. So it's almost like sometimes you have to get this done first to even get there, to even want to do it. And so mine was interesting. This is 2007. I always say I saw the crash coming. That was my world. Right. And I've had I'm very open about it. I've had generalized anxiety my whole life. I see it as a superpower. I use it. I focus it. It's why I did triathlons. It's why, it's why I ran 100 milers. Like I have that energy. In 2007, it got really, really bad to the point of panic attacks. And I don't know if you've ever had one, but it's awful. It's like a full-on heart attack for no reason. I was on a bike ride with friends. And I literally was like, we need to go to the hospital. I'm having a heart attack. And they're like, no, you're having a panic attack. So for the first time in my life, I went to a psychiatrist. And going back to what I said, right away, he said, well, we're going to do everything basic first. I quit all alcohol. I quit all coffee. Me, no coffee, Rick. It was rough. Yeah. Slept better, cleaned up my diet, sunshine. I know it all, right? I went to graduate school I know what causes anxiety. Nothing, no stimulants, nothing. Didn't move the needle at all. Still getting panic attacks. So I go back to him and he says, let's check your testosterone. No way. I didn't even do it. I'm like, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm like,
dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Dude, I'm great. I have sex 12 times a week. No, I didn't, but that was my visceral reaction was there's nothing wrong with my testosterone. I'm a guy. I'm driven. I work out. That was my brain. This is like 15 years ago. Right. And again, I was like, I don't want to be a bodybuilder. That's not what I'm looking for. I pushed back on him literally for 2 years. Went on SSRIs, right? They help. I hated them. Horrible side effects. You name it, I had the side effect. Tried like 5 different ones. They take the edge off everything.
Right.
So no anxiety. I don't even want to do anything. Right. Let's go take a nap. Me, right? Like no drive. So finally I go to the same doctor that I sent you to. And if you know anything about testosterone, I was 48. My testosterone was 280 and my free was 5. That's a normal 80-year-old. And, it could be I was an ultra runner. It could have driven that, right? I was overdoing cardio, not doing enough weights. My diet was good, right? But who knows where I don't even care. Like at this point, like who knows? Maybe I was genetically predisposed to have that happen. And I was, I'm a slow adopter. You know that about me. I didn't want to do injections. And I didn't want to do testosterone. So there's ways to raise your testosterone. We don't have to go into the weeds on this without taking testosterone. There's ways to increase your body's natural production. It's not as effective. It's a really good thing to do if you still want to have kids.
Right.
Because it doesn't stop, fertility, right? Did that for about a year, went from 280 to 450-ish. Definitely felt better. Not like I feel now, right? And then finally, I was like, is there a way I can do it? So then I moved into the pellets. And then, but quite frankly, I am the ultimate experimenter. You name it, I've done it. Nasal, creams, all of them. And by far the injection, there's nothing that compares. And do you know that 85% of Americans will not inject? That's the biggest pushback. So they'll go to the doctor once a week and be injected, which we can go into the weeds on that. That's not a good way to do it. But anyway, so mine was not driven by any of the normal things. I had really good drive. I was anxiety ridden. Dude, it took it down by 80%. Went off all my SSRIs, which is really hard to do. I was on them for 5 years. Completely off them.
Very small percentage of people that can kick SSRIs.
Well, I'm a badass. You know that, right?
Yeah. I mean, shit, dude. Obviously.
No, I hated them. I didn't want to be on them, but I saw no choice. They stopped the panic attacks, which was, they're debilitating, right? And then I went off all those, and again, workouts got better. And I've experimented to the point of now I'm like, I've got it optimized, right? I've played with it. I went too high one time with that bad doctor. I've tried let me back off a little bit. I've tried so I've tried it all. And I've also brought, at this point, I wish I've kept track, easily 100 to 150 men and women into this world. And they're all as thankful as can be, and getting back to where we were, that 280 is going to affect anybody, right? But I know guys that are 400 that feel fantastic. And I know guys like myself, I don't feel good under 800. Really, it's more about free too. That's a personal thing, right? So my journey, and now I don't even think about it. I don't know if you do. To me, it's like my omega-3s. To me, it's Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Takes me 8 seconds to do it. I have the system down where we pull it all for the week, we've got it down.
Right.
It's not hard. It's not expensive. It's totally safe. And like you said, why would I live like this? So obviously I'm super passionate about it, but it's not a panacea. I hope we get that across. And
it's just one tool in a toolbox.
It's just one tool
of various tools to increase your health. But we would be remiss as a cutting edge brand in a concierge personal training space to not have a resource for people to get detailed blood work and see what's going on in their body. And then you can choose how to treat it. And by the way,
it's all up to you.
Rami has sent people to Marek. They do the blood panels and they're like, how do you feel? They're like, I feel great. They're like, great, you're fine.
You're good.
So it's not always, because the sort of, I guess the least generous take would be that you're going to get the blood work and they're going to have all the stuff they want to give you and there's some kind of monetization of that on the back end. Not true.
Nope.
They're really just going to look at your blood work, ask you how you feel, and make some suggestions. You're steering the ship. You get to choose what you feel comfortable with or not.
Yeah.
And hell, best case scenario, you might get your blood work done. At least you'll have a baseline, and maybe they're like, how do you feel? You're like, great. They're like, you're fine.
Yeah. Yeah,
Awesome.
or they found something like my ApoB that I didn't even think about that has no symptoms. And they're like, look, you could be fine, but with your genetic predisposition, why not take this medic? And I was like,
it's $4 a month. And
$4 a month, and it's not a statin, and there's no side effects. I'm like, okay, why would I not do this? Right.
Yep.
It's funny. They found, this is a really interesting one that my doctor never would have found. So I told you a year ago, my systolic blood pressure ticked up a little bit. And we don't know why. I think it might be that I just put on a lot more muscle. It's an interesting concept in a really short period of time.
Gotcha.
And the capillaries weren't caught up yet. That's kind of a fascinating take on it. That's what a bodybuilder told me. He said, just give it time. So I was like, well, what's the least, bad blood pressure medication, right? And there's a drug called telmisartan. went on a really low dose, and turns out like my blood pressure really wasn't that bad. I was measuring at the wrong time of day. So once I listened to a Tia about when to really do it. And so I went to Marek and I'm like, hey, my blood pressure is fine now. It's 118/72. Do I need this stuff? And he goes, actually, it is a great drug. It's great for endothelial health. It's good for anti-aging. There's no side effects. It's sort of like how people take metformin when they're not diabetic. It's an anti-aging, and you can get on it, right? And I'm like, really? And he's like, yeah, and it's $7 a month. I never would have known that. From my GP would have been like, oh, your blood pressure's fine. Let's take you off that. And I'm like, if there's no side effects and it's inexpensive and it's going to help me live longer and live better, to me, it's a vitamin.
Right.
Right? And so again, we're pumping Marek. But anybody, like you said, if you have a great functional doctor, do it,
Right.
So my journey has been, and I've been very open about this. And like when I did my first big presentation on HRT, and it was a group of men, but I talked about your wives need to do this too. I humbled myself with this story. I'm like, you guys might think that I did this to be a bodybuilder or a better ultramarathoner. I did it because I had debilitating panic attacks, and I've never had one since, except when I'm in your presence. But we won't talk about that. But
that's natural.
It's totally natural. But getting back to women real quick, I always talk about Heather, my wife, and she's about to open her location in Buckhead. Isn't that exciting, man?
Franchisee as well.
Yeah, so we got 4 now, so that's pretty exciting. Four part owners and 4 of them. She went and got her blood done, and she was, she's menopausal, and she's estrogen makes sense, right? And progesterone and all that, and that helped, and then testosterone as well. And her biggest takeaway, because she's in great shape, you know that, right? She looks fantastic, was she had lost motivation to go to the gym. For my wife, that's insane. This is the woman who, when I met her, was teaching like 7 aerobics classes a day. Right. She was like, made me look like nothing, right? She loves exercise. And it'd be like 5 days, and I go, she's like, I haven't been in the gym in 5 days and I don't care. I'm like, we need to check this. And she it's the same thing. I'll text her and go, are we having dinner tonight? She's like, I've been in the gym for 3 hours, and she's 58. How cool is that?
Yeah.
So hers was not anxiety. It wasn't depression. It wasn't muscle. It wasn't what you think. It was that motivation specifically for that. And, there are obviously the other benefits. But funny side story, she doesn't like doing the needle stuff. So I have it in my phone when she needs to take it, because it's a lot less than us, right? And I prep the needle, and you don't think she'll listen to this, right? No one listens to this.
I mean, if you're
so I always put a little extra in. Is that a problem or no? It's
extra
good, right?
Testosterone?
Yeah. Just a little.
Yet?
Yeah.
Got a little mustache.
Her voice is really interesting.
Voice is deep.
I don't do that, honey. That's a joke. Back. I give you the exact amount.
You heard it.
Yeah, you heard it here.
Check your amounts. But look, I don't want to get too nuanced.
I know.
Needles and all that. At the end of the day, this was an opportunity to say, look, this could be a big part of being healthy, right?
Right.
We have procured
a vendor, by the way.
Right, or not.
You don't have to just stop.
But you need to know. Yeah. And I mean, it's part of being healthy. We have procured a vendor, so if you should choose, and if you're an Alloy franchisee, you're going to have this resource to send people to Marek Health. It's all telehealth. Get your blood work done. Find out what's going on inside your body. There are remedies if you need them, but my personal experience has been nothing but positive. There are a lot of misconceptions. There are a lot of benefits. So I would just say, if you've never heard of it or whatever, do some research. We've rattled off a couple of names. Keep an open mind. But I think this type of healthcare and where we're headed as a brand and the things that we're going to stack around it are going to be the future. I mean, this is where we're headed.
Yeah.
We're going to get away from treating sick people, and we're going to try to get in front of this thing and fix people before they get to that point.
Yeah.
That's our goal.
I mean, you and I have talked about lifespan versus health span, right? Like, we are going to live longer. They said the first person who's going to live to 150 was just born this year.
Really?
Yeah. So that should have been my did you know.
Yeah.
And so, but who the F cares if you live to 150 and you're miserable?
Yeah, if the last third of your life is bedridden.
Oh my gosh, could you imagine?
Would you care?
Yeah,
right.
You'd be that 96-year-old guy that had a kid. That'd be really.
Well, and, it's interesting because if you look at, if I look at someone like you, and you're just turned 60 this last year, and your level
next month,
God, your level of energy and your fitness level are so different than the normal individual. Granted, you do all the things and all that, but like, it's such a vast difference between that and if I brought in someone who was 61 who didn't have good habits, who didn't exercise, didn't look at any of their blood work and try to remedy that, it's a completely different person. And you can be really old at 61, or you can be
think of our parents.
Right?
I mean, your dad,
like, yeah,
retired.
When I was in my 20s, if you were 50, like when my parents were 50, I was like, you were old as dirt. You really were.
Yeah, and that is really a good point, Rick. Like how much older we are having kids now. We laughed when our kids were in, I call it Little League because I'm from New York, but the baseball in Atlanta. And I said, if a person was transformed here from the past and like looked at the baseball game, they go, oh, isn't it nice that all the grandparents bring the kids to the games? And there were no grandparents. It's all parents. We're all gray hair, 50 years old with 7-year-olds.
Right.
So if that's the case, I had my first child at 37, my second at 41. I do not want to be the grandfather who cannot do anything, right? So to me, if I can do this, if my wife can do it, if you and your even like you said, like your daughter,
she's 24. She's having
did the blood.
So
my son's 22.
She got her blood work done. She has a baseline now. She's got a couple little tweaks to make that weren't very expensive that'll make her feel better. Why not?
That's a really good takeaway for the young people listening to this that are 31 and they just toned out in the beginning, like I don't need to worry about this. 100% get a blood work now and just sit on it because you feel now probably the best you've felt. That's your optimal. And if that is, let's just use testosterone for, if that's 720, then that's the number you want to kind of stay close to maintaining for the rest of your life.
Right.
If it's 450, then that's so you might not ever have to do supplementation.
Right.
So do that. Like if we can get that point across, you love it. And like I told you, my 22-year-old son, he just asked me and I'm like, absolutely. I mean, he's probably 2,600 on his testosterone, so I'm like, don't go for that.
22,
yeah, it's good to be 22.
Yeah, and listen, I'm not trying to turn into that. Neither are you. I'm just trying to show up as my best for my family and my team and franchisees and all the things we're trying to build. It takes a lot of energy, and you need to be that person, right? And I think if you're we talk about those T-shirts we have that say "Do your job." That doesn't literally mean your job. If you're on W-2 or whatever, maybe, but also means like who are you as a friend, a parent, a sibling, a child. If you got aging parents, you have the juice to take care of them. Like that's what I'm really talking about.
How do you show up?
Jobs you have. How do you show up to your life?
Yeah,
and whatever role that is. If we can provide you a mechanism to do that better, and certainly we can through exercise, healthy eating, and all that, and this is just another spoke in the wheel that's going to help.
I love it. I love that we're doing it, man. It's great. I love it.
Likewise. Well, thanks for turning me on to him. And again, you've always been on the cutting edge of this stuff. It's like we could spend a couple hours just going through all this crap you do, but it would scare people off of it. So we don't
want to go into detail. You know me, I've got like 7 pages of notes here.
He never shows up with notes. He's like, let's talk about hormones. He brings a full-on notebook. But anyway, I hope that helps you guys just understand sort of the higher level lens on who Marek Health is, why we thought it was important to bring someone like that in, and just enough empirical evidence there and real science to say, hey, this is something we should be looking at for sure.
Awesome, brother.
Thanks, brother. Peace.
Yep.